from Dynostorm, located in Palm Beach, Florida. Welcome tonight, JD. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
How you doing, JD?
Very good. How about yourself?
Oh, it's been hectic up here. We had some pretty monstrous thunderstorms up here in northeast Florida last night, and I'm trying to recoup from them.
There's certainly been a lot out there to watch.
Yeah. There's been a lot of things going around, and there was a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. What do you have planned for October this year?
October, we have more scheduled research flights. I believe since the last time I was on your show, we've picked up Dr. Peter Ray, the head meteorologist from Florida State University, who now has a portable Doppler radar system that's attached to an 18-wheeler. And he has now joined our team and is going to lead our research project from the next 9 months to 4 years. So he is currently putting together a new drafted plan. We know we've completed the proof of concept this past July 19th by taking an active thunderstorm off the Doppler radar system off the coast of Jupiter last July 19th. And now he's put together a research plan to quantify that. We want to get some more quantitative data so that we can continue to defend this research in the scientific community.
Is Peter Ray... go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead. Okay, you said an 18-wheeler. This would be based for a weak landfalling system, or you'd be using it to be... That way you'd be mobile along the coast to pick up on something that you're doing your experiments off the coast with.
In both facets, for weak landfall, but as well as being mobile so that we can do further research in a capacity of basically chasing the weather at that point. Where it is and we feel there are good cells that we can get quality research out of, we'd be able to move that piece of equipment, giving us readings that we can't gain off of any other type of extra radar system that's out there right now.
Right.
Peter Ray has developed things that are going to work specifically for our project to tell us how this material is directly reacting within the atmosphere and giving us that data so we can start to head towards a more positive role that's very effective.
Right. We had heard the beginning of the 2001 season of this vehicle that they were developing it at FSU, and we never heard any more of it. So
it's completed now.
I'm sorry?
It's completed now.
Okay.
It's in service and ready to go.
Great.
So we're really excited about having Dr. Ray as well as his equipment, because that can really step this project to the next level.
What's the
right,
range
I've heard of him. He's one of the top-notch meteorologists at FSU and also in the Southeast. So
he really is, and he got along very well with our research team, and we showed him the preliminary data that we had from our past 2 years of testing, and he was absolutely overwhelmed and felt very confident that we needed to push this project forward. And basically at that point, we made a collective decision to put him in the lead of taking charge of this research program and outlining what's in front of us and what we need to get done.
Right. There was also something that Jim mentioned to me. What kind of requests or responses from media and officials did you get with Lily?
We had a massive response, and actually everyone wanted the question answered as to whether we were out there doing continuing research and if we happened to work on Lily itself. At this point, we weren't out there in that storm, but that goes to show that you can take these storms with things that can be altered within these storms to bring them down in categories very quickly. And we feel we have that technology. So it was a very good situation, I think, for everyone to realize that these storms you can take the power out of them, and Mother Nature certainly can do it to itself, and we have to find out exactly what's causing that and how we can create it upon demand.
Right. I discussed this in chat last week after it occurred, and we were, during the show, we were actually watching the beginning of the eyewall collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And, I believe it was a number of different things, such as the cooler SSCs. It was being squeezed by the high and the low on either side of it. Plus, it maxed out basically. And that's something that'll be coming down. People will be writing their graduation papers and things on that. So
there's no question. And we feel we have that type of technology. We have many facets of what our research is going to give us an information and know how we can really push forward. But our material is doing things that haven't been tested in the past. There's been giant weather modification projects certainly put on by our own government in Project Storm Fury. but everyone was working with ice crystals at that point, at that procedure. We're the first to come out and work with actual vapor moisture, and we're able to create an endothermic reaction at the same time. So we feel that from what the computer modeling is showing us and from the data that we're gaining preliminarily from the field test, we feel very positive our research is going to be beneficial.
JD, I was watching the Weather Channel about a week ago, and they had a special on about weather modification.
Okay.
Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
I was wondering if the Weather Channel had approached you about that, because they were talking about the slime coating they were going to put on the ocean to try to eliminate the upflow into hurricanes.
Sure.
And they were just talking about all the ramifications of weather modification, and I just wondered if the Weather Channel had approached you guys or anything like that.
We have talked to the Weather Channel on and off and certainly been on that show. We weren't discussing that program. But similarly, at the same time, Tech TV had released a new show on us along with Dr. Peter Ray, showing the ability of the new Florida State University Hurricane Hunter and what that new research was going to bring to our project. And it was a nice piece that they did on us.
Oh, so they showed the vehicle and everything on the...
They actually showed our aircraft and some of our film footage from this past July 19th. And then along with some footage of Dr. Peter Ray's new hurricane hunt.
Maybe we can get them to maybe send them an email and get them to re-show it and give us a date and time when they do it so the listeners be able to watch it.
Sure.
That's something we'll give a shot at.
Absolutely.
You guys going to have any videos on your website anytime soon showing some of your projects?
Yeah, we're actually working on that now, and before I got on the show, we were asking our Director of Public Relations there, Louis Heidelmeyer, to get on there and see if anything had been uploaded yet, but our designers are working on it as we speak, so we hope by early next week we'll have some new footage up on the site for everyone to take a look at.
Fantastic.
Great.
You guys, I know you had some plans to go out this year, September, or tentatively. Was there any reason why this has not taken place, or is it just because the systems have been unorganized, or what's your theory on that?
No, mostly from our point, it was getting the proper infrastructure together. We wanted to make sure that we had the right researchers on board, continuing to build our team, the way we will apply these aircraft, the way we will load them on the delivery system, because you have just as much internal research, and then when you prepare for a field test, there's a lot of logistic things that come available, as well as the issues with the aircraft, and that creates a lot of time on the ground to develop those systems and actually machine them and get the aircraft prepped to go out and have a positive test. We certainly want to make every one of these missions count, certainly because we want to watch the safety of our pilots and everyone that's involved.
All right, that means safety, including maximum payload, so...
No question.
Yeah.
But the beneficial thing is we have the top researchers in the world now involved in this project. And it certainly stems from the top with Dr. Ray, but leads into a host of astronauts and individuals with military background and other meteorological type things that they've done, because you're working with Mother Nature in extreme situations, and you need to be prepared for all of these things. But we feel we now have the right team in place to really push this project forward.
Right, so by next season you'll have a whole lot more in place, so where possibly you may test on a tropical system next year?
I would absolutely think so. That is definitely the plan here. We'll continue some of our flight patterns and small research projects throughout the end of October and the beginning of November, and then come back in and do a lot of modeling throughout the winter and get ready for next season, and certainly be out working with some significant tropical situations.
So we should not expect any seating on an organized tropical system for the remainder of this season, then?
It's always a possibility. If the opportunity presents itself and logistically we're ready and the aircraft are prepped at that point, you could certainly see us work on a system by the end of this season. And we're gearing those aircraft now because we're planning to do research throughout the end of this year. So if the opportunity presents itself, we'll certainly take a crack at it.
I have to admit, you guys must be in a situation where you have a lot of explaining to people, to the media, because you have a lot of systems that have collapsed this year. And the first thing that must come into a lot of people's minds is, are you guys out there doing anything to eliminate the power of these systems? What do you say to the media when they call up and have a question like that? Were you out there? And how things get sometimes carried away on the internet, in the chat rooms, etc., where people are assuming that you're out there. What's your general line of your response to the media when they ask you that?
Well, I mean, truthfully, a lot of our research at this point we feel is classified. We certainly have a patent on the method of modifying weather. But the things that we do within our own internal team, within our research and some of our missions, certainly stay in-house at that point. When we feel the results are there and we can quantify it, that's when we feel we can take it to the public and give them a response on accurately what has taken place with the systems we've worked with. The thing that we can announce at this point is we know that we are environmentally safe with our material, and we have the safety at everyone, certainly at the top of our list. And we feel that we can be effective and beneficial from a humanitarian aspect, just from the simple fact of saving human lives. We certainly can't view these storms from only a basis of protecting the United States. We feel that third world countries that do not have the building codes that we have in place and certainly can't evacuate those areas have to bear down, and you see significant loss of life when this takes place, and we feel that there has to be something that we can do to work along with Mother Nature to reduce the strength of these massive cells.
Dr. Peter Ray's radar, how far out does that reach?
I'm sorry, you were breaking up.
The Peter Ray's, the radar, the mobile radar, how far out, does that go further out than a land-based radar?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't know. That would definitely be a question directed in his area. What I do know is from what he's prepared with the research plan and from what the preliminary data is showing, he feels that he has radar capability. We know that he has radar capability that is going to be beneficial to this project. And nothing from the meetings that I've sat in on have implied that we couldn't get far enough offshore to get proper readings with our work.
Mm-hmm. Right, I believe with a portable Doppler radar, it's up to about 145 miles, if I'm correct. What I've read in the past.
Oh, what's the normal range for a regular radar?
It actually depends on the location of the land-based radar. Because you have mountains and things too. But say here in Jacksonville, I think the long-range loop actually goes out to about 140 miles.
I know that some of his time delay was to gain the state-of-the-art technology.
Right.
He didn't want to go out with this unit not having all the capability that he had envisioned at the beginning of that project, and the additional time was certainly beneficial. He certainly has different technology within his radar systems that will give us the ability to measure and quantify our research, which we can't gain off a typical radar that's available now.
So
will
I guess
this be in conjunction with FSU, or is this going to be totally separate from...
No, in conjunction with FSU.
Okay.
So we're to assume that this is going to be close to the United States where this testing takes place so that the radar can pick up on what your activity is.
Yes.
So the Caribbean will be out of the question.
That depends. With the researchers that we're working with at this point have fixed equipment that give us longer range capability. And these systems, certainly with the jet aircraft that we have, we can chase them down quite a ways offshore. And we certainly feel that we're going to work in a growing fashion and take systems that we feel we can get, again, good data from, which certainly could be offshore more than 140 miles. So I think it'll be a blended effort, depending upon what weather we really have the opportunity to work with. It's a little tough to plan from that side of it. Every day isn't a perfect day for this research. There's a lot of pre-planning that goes into it, and certainly a lot of staging at that point for the prime opportunity to present itself, and then we're able to go out and actually do the research that we need.
Another question, how much of your time, I know you have many products that you're working on right now, what would you say is the percentage of the time that is spent in Dynostorm compared to your other projects?
Each of our projects is separated into divisions, so the division and team that is put onto the Dynostorm project gets 100% of its allocation. It's a project that we cannot afford to come off of. It's research that we want to push forward, and we know that we're the only ones out there that can do it, both from the perspective of having the right team and the right things that we can put behind the project, and also from the point that we have a patent on it, so we know that we control this type of research.
Mm-hmm.
All right, basically, it's the difference between $15 billion in damage and $500 million in damage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're going to just have to keep in touch with you and find out when you'll keep us informed on when you're going to be seeding these systems. What's the proper term, by the way, for when you're going to go out and do your research, or you're going to dump your product? What would be the proper definition of that?
To be honest with you, we classify them as missions. It runs very similar to a military type aspect to it. And you have to be, simply from the way how many things logistically you have to pull off, and certainly the safety issues. It's an advanced mechanism that has to take place in a very large scale, and everything has to happen pretty much perfectly. But Peter, from the initiation of coming up with this idea and feeling that what he had dreamed of could come to fruition, and then basically took it from that point and got the people involved, and we pushed this thing forward. So I guess the reality of it is we're modifying weather.
Right.
More or less, seeding is done for certain isolated situations where we're trying to produce additional rainfall or capture more moisture within the air and bring it to the earth. And that's been done for quite some time. We're working more towards the extreme side of weather and seeing what we can do to reduce its strength.
I know they did some research, some seeding in Vietnam, I believe.
Yes.
To near the Ho Chi Minh River to cause rainfall to thwart the enemy.
That's correct.
I guess you guys can create rainfall in drought areas. I know we talked about that last time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a lot of research going on in that department as well?
As far as research on agricultural areas?
Yeah, for droughts.
Yes, for drought we absolutely do. That's one of the separate tests that are run within that weather modification division. We're also working on the ability to rain out monsoons. We have interest in the Far East to work on typhoon research. So there's multiple things that are going on at the same time within that plant.
Well, Bob, any more questions?
No, I was just racking my brain to see about bringing one up, and I think that pretty much covered it all.
Well, this has just been
one thing you might see up and coming, which is big news to the company, and the Dynostorm project certainly is Peter Cardani has been able to continue talking with the Russian embassy and the manufacturers of the Antonov 124, which is one of the largest jet aircraft in the world, which will give us some extreme payload and logistical capability that we don't have within, say, the C-130. So we actually have our research team working with their load masters at this point to develop that rigging system and dispersal out of that aircraft.
Right.
But again, I know we asked you this last time too. Is that aircraft going to be able to handle the high winds that it's going to be approaching?
Absolutely, because we're actually going to get, in some cases, above it versus going directly through it as the hurricane hunters do for NOAA.
Right. Well.
Right, so you'd be flying at levels like the Gulfstream 4 does, the NOAA Gulfstream 4 does, above the system.
Correct.
So how would the upflow in the center of the storm affect that?
Those are certainly issues, and these pilots, to listen to them on a continuing basis talk about flying into extreme weather. You know, a pilot is trained from day one to avoid it. So it certainly takes a different breed of pilot to be able to actually fly these aircraft directly into that storm and be effective.
Right.
Physically and engineer-wise, they feel that the aircraft can certainly handle it, or we wouldn't even be discussing it.
Yeah.
But it certainly takes phenomenal capability on the pilot side and the crew to actually be able to be effective and safe with that aircraft at all times.
And the payload.
No question.
That's the whole thing, is to be able to get the payload balanced out and be able to disperse it.
That's correct.
Correct amount. Right?
Absolutely.
That's what you're basically doing now, is getting the aircraft fitted to be able to do that.
Well, I know we've taken a lot of heat for having these interviews with you about weather modification. I know there's a lot of people up there that are upset about it. They don't like to see Mother Nature messed with. But I believe myself anyway, I don't know how Bob feels about it, but I think it's a good thing to try to weaken a hurricane just a little bit to save some lives.
I think there's always going to be varying opinions on it, and you certainly, everyone has to be concerned when you're talking about dealing with Mother Nature, but you certainly alter it on a daily basis. From cars, I mean, we know we can go into the little things that certainly can affect it, and I don't think anyone thinks about the environmental damage that occurs when a giant system makes landfall. The individual homeowners are the largest generators of hazardous waste in the world, and when you take those concentrated areas that have basically been turned upside down, you have a tremendous amount of hazardous fluids that are now poured into the earth, and the cleanup effort is immense on the part of FEMA and all the hazmat teams that have to come in, and that pollution and environmental damage lasts for years.
Mm-hmm. Well, JD,
I believe I've seen. I work for a large corporation, and retail food distribution, and they use this type of material for picking up oil spills and stuff that are spilled, hydraulic fluids and diesel fuel and things like that. They use it to pick it up off the ground, and it works. I mean, it works 100%, and then, you know, it's safely, you know, picked up and put, you know, based upon how ocean and everything, I mean, the material works, so I've seen it in action.
I agree with you. We make strides in that end as technology as well. Our main core business, before we got into the diversification and got into weather modification and so forth, is the absorbent manufacturing of super absorbents and polypropylene-based fiber absorbents to handle hazmat spills. And we still currently produce those materials and distribute them throughout the industrial market on a global basis. But there is immeasurable amounts of damage that takes place in those areas in a concentrated effort.
Right, yeah.
And it's certainly something that we feel, along with the combination of loss of life and the devastating amount of real estate damage that is done in the billions of dollars, we feel that this is positive research to be able to work with Mother Nature to reduce its strength.
Yeah, there's land areas all through North Florida here where they're talking about toxic waste and things like that here. They've actually built parks and things here, and now they're finding out years and decades later that there's toxic waste under the ground, so it shuts these areas down. But tell me if I'm correct, the last show we were discussing the material and that you condensed the material to where it would be even more absorbent. Am I correct?
That's correct. We actually changed the size and shape of the particle itself, giving it a capability to more hang time, if you will, in layman's terms, almost come down in a fluttering effect like a snowflake, buying more time and creating more surface area to create a better surface phenomenon and giving the capability above 2,000 times its own weight and absorption.
Well, Jim, any more questions?
Well, that should be about it. JD, thank you for being with us tonight and sharing your latest goings-on at Dynostorm, and we'll be in touch with you maybe one more time before the end of the year. I know we do a wrap-up of the hurricane season every year, and maybe you'll have some more information by then on what your current plans are and what you've done in October or November. And
we certainly look forward to it, and certainly thank you for having us again.
Okay, JD, have a good night, and thanks again.
Take care.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was JD Dutton from Dynostorm.
Well, they've got an interesting, you know, it's an interesting concept. I hope it works because, you know, like you said, we've taken a lot of flack, you and I, and, you know, they're constantly taking the flack, and it's just, you know, if they can take a Category 4 hurricane like Lily was and weaken it to a point of a Category 2 hurricane just prior to it making landfall, you know, you look at the devastation that Lily could have created as a Category 4 hurricane if it had just plowed into the Louisiana coast.
Right.
But it didn't. It dissipated to a Category 2, and that's basically the difference that we're talking about. I believe there was one death from Lily after the storm.
Right. Oh, it would have been a huge difference if it came in there as a Cat 4.
Sure, yeah. You would have had 20-foot storm surge washing 25, 30 miles inland, which we didn't see. So, you know, it would have made a big difference. I mean, if say you get a Hurricane Andrew, you know, everyone's always bringing up Andrew, so we'll bring up Andrew. If there was another Hurricane Andrew type storm that strong, and they were able to weaken it prior to landfall, you look at the effects it would have had on a metropolitan area.
Yeah, and you picture,
you
remember the calls we had before the hurricane from Louisiana? People were scared. I mean, they were practically shaking in their boots, knowing that this Category 4 was coming towards them, and there was nothing they could do about it. Now, just think if there was a possibility that they knew that Dynostorm could come to the rescue and take this monster and turn it into a pest, and just think how grateful they would be of them flying in there and doing this. And again, you got these people on the internet that just don't get it, and we can't mess with the weather, we can't. You know, I mean, yes, there are some unanswered questions, but when it comes to just strictly a hurricane of that magnitude coming towards the coast and knowing that they can stop it from being completely devastating, I think is worth the risk. I mean, I just don't know how else to say it.
Right. You know, and it's, I'm all for it. Let them do what they got to do, and let them get the research done. Because if they can show that it'll work, and then that, NOAA will back them, and different governments will back